AskREddit. What sounds like fiction but is actually a real historical event. Some guy in Australia decided he wanted to hunt rabbits, but rabbits don't live in Australia, so then he released like 12 in his backyard and now there's a fuck ton of rabbits in Australia. The Glasgow ice cream war. 6 people died in a turf war over ice cream van routes. They were dealing heroin out of the vans. In 2007 a paraglider got trapped in the updraft of 2 joining thunderstorms and lifted to an altitude of 10 kilometers. She landed 35 hours later about 60 kilometers north of her starting position, having survived extreme cold, lightning and lack of oxygen. In the 1800s there were street vendors in Egypt who sold ancient Egyptian mummies, just lined them up on a street corner and sold them like they were umbrellas on a rainy day. English tourists would buy them to display as oddities. A town in France nearly danced itself to death in 1518 because of a dancing plague. The marathon at the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis, the first place finisher did most of the race in a car. He had intended to drop out and got a car back to the stadium to get his change of clothes and just kind of started jogging when he heard the fanfare. The second place finisher was carried across the finish line, legs technically twitching, by his trainers. They had been refusing him water and giving him a mixture of brandy and rat poison for the entire race. Doping wasn't illegal yet and this was a terrible attempt at it, so he got the gold when the first guy was revealed. Third finisher was unremarkable. Somehow fourth finisher was a Cuban mailman who had raised the funds to attend the Olympics by running non-stop around his entire country. He landed in New Orleans and promptly lost all of the traveling money on a riverboat casino. He ran the race in dress shoes and long trousers cut off at the knee by a fellow competitor with a knife. He probably would have come in first, well, second, behind the car had it not been for the hour nap he took on the side of the track after eating rotten apples he found on the side of the race. 9th and 12th finishers were from South Africa and ran barefoot. South Africa didn't actually send a delegation, these were students who just happened to be in town and thought it sounded fun. 9th was chased a mile off course by angry dogs. Note, these are the first Africans to compete in any modern Olympic event. Half the participants had never raced competitively before. Some died. St. Louis only had one water stop on the entire run. This, coupled with the dusty road and exacerbated by the cars kicking up dust, led to the above fatalities. And yet, somehow, rat poison guy survived to get the gold. The Russian delegation arrived 1 week late because they were still using the Julian calendar in 1904. Seriously, this needs to be a movie. This sounds like some Monty Python shit. The longest piano piece of any kind is Vexations by Eric Satie. It consists of a 180-note composition which, on the composer's orders, must be repeated 840 times so that the whole performance is 18 hours 40 minutes. Its first reported public performance in September 1963 in the Pocket Theater, New York City, required a relay team of 10 pianists. The New York Times critic fell asleep at 4 a.m. and the audience dwindled to 6 masochists. At the conclusion, one sadomasochist shouted, "Encore!" Jack, a baboon who was employed to change rail signals. After initial skepticism, the railway decided to officially employ Jack once his job competency was verified. The baboon was paid 20 cents one day and a half bottle of beer each week. It is widely reported that in his 9 years of employment with the railroad, Jack never made a mistake. There were one few Japanese soldiers who refused to surrender after World War II and remained on duty in the rainforest for 30 years after the war ended. The Great Stink of London in 1858. One summer the heat dried up the River Thames where all the human waste went and an unbearable smell pervaded throughout the entire city. All Parliament representatives were eventually coerced out of their homes outside of London to convene and solve the issue. Much to the citizens' glee, Parliament was held in their building on the bank of the River Thames, resulting in one of the fastest Parliament decisions ever made to reform the London sewer system. The rise and fall of Alexander the Great, never lost a battle in his life, conquered the whole known world, and only stopped because his soldiers were tired. Return of Napoleon, an army was sent to intercept him, and they ended up fighting for him. If it was shown in a movie, most people would have considered it cheesy and unrealistic. The town of Rothenburg ob der Tauber in Germany, one of the country's oldest and most preserved cities. Essentially during the 30 Years' War, the Catholic army wanted to destroy the town because they resisted the church. Count von Tilly sounds like a Monty Python name. Was going to destroy the town, but as a gesture of peace the town offered him a mass 3.25 L of local wine. He declared that if anyone in the town could drink the mass of wine in one go, he would spare the town and move on. Then someone just walked up and did it, so the army left. Much later during World War II, when the US was performing air raids, someone in the White House knew of this town and pleaded that we do not destroy it. So it has been saved from 2 wars, all because one guy chugged a bunch of wine. The entire Taiping Rebellion, a war started by a Chinese peasant who dreamed and believed he was Jesus' younger brother. Although poor, the first thing he did was have a giant demon-slaying sword forged, took over a city, asked the British why they wouldn't pay him tribute as the new head of their faith, engaged in total war with the Qing, applied pseudo-communist policies like abolishing private property, separated women and men from ever interacting, and sent the women to the front lines. Over 20 million people died, with some estimates as high as 40 million. It was the 4th deadliest conflict in human history. It killed more people than World War I. Only World War II, transition of the Ming, and Qing conquest of the Ming were deadlier. During World War I, the Germans sent Lenin back to Russia in a sealed train, calling him the most dangerous weapon that they had. A Finnish soldier, who managed to escape capture after losing his squad in a methed-up hallucination. Being the doctor of the group, he was carrying the meth pills for the whole squad, and in order to survive and escape his pursuers he took the whole pill box, 30 pills, when the allowed dosage for a grown man was 1. He survived in the Soviet wilderness for 2 weeks, eating only pine buds and one time a Siberian jay that he caught and ate raw. When he was rescued he was 45 and had a resting heart rate of 200 BPM. Serial killer Karl Panzram broke into the home of former President William H. Taft and stole jewelry, bonds, and a gun. With the money he got from the first 2 he bought a yacht in which he used the gun to kill a bunch of sailors. The fire in Dublin, Ireland on the 18th of June 1875. A fire broke out and spread to a malt house, and the heat broke open every alcohol barrel and flooded the streets with it. The people of Dublin decides to drink the burning alcohol that is spreading in the streets. Filled with litter and debris and was literally on fire. 13 people died not from the fire or smoke but from alcohol poisoning they got from drinking the street whiskey. The Second Punic War has all the makings of a great story. It has a blood oath, an underdog story, bravery, an OP main character, tragedy and a final showdown between the 2 main characters. The fact that it all or most of it happened blows my mind. There could be a godlike series about the 3 wars. In 496 the army of King Gao Jian of Yu put 3 ranks of criminals in the front of their battle formation. Their task was to impress the enemy with their ferocity and commitment by chopping off their own heads as soon as battle was joined. The tactic was a success. While their opponents from the state of Wu were recovering from their astonishment, they were overrun by the rest of the Yu army. The convicts, who were condemned men anyway, had been coerced by the threat that if they didn't comply with this plan their families would be executed also. Stephen Fry on QI. Vesna Vulovic fell from a height of 10,160 meters and lived. She holds the world record for surviving the highest fall without a parachute. Anything more than 450 and you might as well go for the record. The Japanese kamikaze divine wind that saved the country from an amphibious invasion by the Mongolian hordes. The Mongols captured a foothold on some outlying Japanese islands and started to attack the mainland. The Japanese army pushed them back, and they had to retreat to China. When they did, a typhoon ravaged their navy and sank their ships. The Mongolians, probably reasonably seeing this as a fluke, decided to rebuild and attack again. 7 years later, unfortunately for them, the Japanese fortified their coastline. After basically months of sailing around seeking a place to land, another typhoon struck their fleet and destroyed them. There would be number 3rd invasion. During World War I, Christmas 1914, the British and German forces on the Western Front unofficially made a ceasefire without the authorization of their superiors in order to celebrate, trade goods, and play football. Also during World War I, the Russian and German armies in Poland stopped fighting each other in order to fight off an enormous pack of wolves that had been attacking both armies. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like if you want more. Talking meme.